Hey guys, S5Beamer here with another tier list update for you. So this is recorded as of the second JCG of the format, post the spell boost nerf, which basically eliminated the adherent of elimination. So I'm here with shadowverse.master.com, which is a new website that gives you all the breakdown and information about the latest tournaments, and it's also got an automated tier list. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the tier list from Shadowverse Master, talk through kind of how they come to that conclusion and whether or not I, as a pro player, have any kind of differences of opinion. So I'll jump right into it. So we'll just go to the tier list here. So tier 1, they have Sephi Rune, Spellboost Rune, Loot Sword in tier 1, Discard Dragon, Amulet Haven, Dragon, Last Word Shadow in tier 2, Puppet Portal, Hazumi Forest, Wrathblood, and Control Portal in tier 3, and Condemned Haven, Chest Rune, and Handless Blood, and Ghost Shadow in tier 4. So just off the top of my head, I'll tell you the things that I don't necessarily agree with. One thing, I think Chest Rune is not actually a tier 4. I think this deck should actually be higher. I think it's just because the problem is that Sephi Rune and Spell Boost Rune are just so good in comparison to like every other deck of the format that there's not really that much of a reason to play Chest Rune other than these two. But actually in terms of like overall power level, like Chest Rune is probably easily, or at least in my opinion, like a tier 2 deck. But I mean, like, look, honestly, it's just one of those problems of cannibalization within classes. I think the other thing that's like worth noting is like Loot Sword. I think the performance has been kind of extreme. So as a lot of people know, Loot Sword is a pretty skillful deck, and so you've got a lot of people playing the deck, and then you've got like a pretty average performance, I would say. But then at the top end at the JCGs, it got a first place in the most recent one, and it got a second place in the JCG just prior to that. So that's the reason why this deck is at tier 1. And I think the other call out I have is that I think Puppet Portal should be higher. I think, but this is actually more of a biased take from me. I think Puppet Portal is probably like more in the tier 2 section. But aside from that, I think this tier list is very accurate. It's based off an algorithm that automatically looks at all the JCGs. I think it's the past 4 JCGs, so sample size is not high enough yet for it to fully get like a fully accurate depiction. There's like still outliers like Crystal Haven, which only one like made top 16 over the past 2 tournaments, but it also won the tournament, and the algorithm actually weighs the first place as a pretty big achievement, which, to be fair, a lot of tier lists should actually take that into account anyway. So I think you'll see a few more shifts as we go onto the 3rd and the 4th JCG, but I think generally speaking it's pretty accurate regardless. Now I will show you now the tournament section. So we do have reports for the 6th and the 8th, the JCG on the 6th and the 8th. So we'll go through the 6th JCG. So this is kind of breakdown of like the decks that topped. We also have the number of people who played it overall, the number that qualified, and the conversion rate. So you can see here the conversion rate for Loot Sword is not very good. And then there were a few hype decks like Hazumi, which I think at some point will become broken. Maybe not this expansion, maybe after the mini or whatever. But I just fundamentally hate this deck because it really limits design space. Like, for example, every time Cygames makes a new card for Forest, they have to be like, oh well shit, like can this actually can this deck potentially be abused in Hazumi? Or like they can't print like easy wisp generators because that might potentially make Hazumi Forest pop off too quickly, etc. So it's only a matter of time, because the moment they slip up even once, this deck will just catapult. And I mean, like, this is probably actually a tier 3 deck at the moment, but what I will say about it is that it has really lopsided matchups. Like, any deck that doesn't have like a consistent way to kind of OTK you down from 20 while relying on boards, for example Sword, will have issues beating Hazumi. But then if you look at decks like Spellboost Rune, for instance, it is like really difficult to beat that, because Spellboost Rune will just set up and get an OTK on you, right? And with Spellboost being the most popular deck of the format right now, Hazumi Forest is unable to climb any higher. So just an interesting tidbit. I got a bit sidetracked, but at least this way I won't have to talk about Hazumi Forest too much later on in the video. So you can see here that we've got the top 16 deck list as well. So as I mentioned earlier, Amulet Haven actually won this tournament, and so did Spellboost Rune despite the nerf. and then you've got Loot Sword coming in top 2, and Discard Dragon coming in top 3 and top 4. Now, I will actually move on to this section here, which is top 16 card breakdown. So this one you can actually filter based on like kind of the classes, and it'll give you like the breakdown of what cards are being used in the top 16. So one thing to note about Spellburst Rune is that after nerfing Adherent of Elimination, it is no longer played at all, I'm pretty sure. Instead, what people have started running it instead of it is Orchestral Mage, which you can see it's split between 2 copies and 1 copy in the top 16. Essentially, this means that you've got a card that does 3 storm damage, like pretty much at all stages when you're looking to do that much damage. Combos with Enchanted Sword, Raining Blades, so you get more drain damage. Unlike Inherent, you can play it anytime. So with Inherent, you want to play it first, right? But with this, you can actually draw into it and play it as long as you have 3 mana. So, I mean, obviously Inherent's way better, but what this means is that Spellburst has more staying power. So before, if they didn't kill you, they would be on like 5 to 10 HP, right? So you have a chance to kill them. But now they just hit you for like 15 damage or something, but they also heal for like 10. So, like, and it's like a 10-10 ward or something like that, so you can't kill them straight away. And so they abuse that with the new inclusion of Uranus as well. It's very easy for them to get to under 20 cards, and it's fairly common for them to get to 5 cards or less as well. So that's like an extra 9 damage finisher. It's reminiscent to the Control Rune deck that was seeing play towards the end of last expansion as well. And the only other change to the standard deck is that Greater Will obviously did get nerfed, but the use rate has dropped from like what would obviously have been 100% before to like more of a tech like niche card, right? Instead, people are running Story of a Lifetime instead of it. So Story of a Lifetime, look, it's better in the current build because firstly, you don't need a target in order to cast it, and secondly, because of the way the deck works now, obviously you can use it early game, but also you can on turn 6 or 7, you can like basically unleash your hand, deal 10 damage or whatever to their face, and you end your turn with Story of a Lifetime, so you refill your hand, right? And then that'll give you another opportunity to pop off the turn after to kind of finish them off. So that's the reason why this is seeing play. So Spellburst Rune, I think, is still top dog. I don't think it's like, I don't know if it still requires any more nerfs, but in my head, like, it's top 2 deck. So take that as it is. And then the other deck is Sephi Rune, which, as you can see, also has fairly high conversion rate, high play rate, pretty good performance. I think it won the JCG after. We can actually skip to that. Hang on. We can skip to the 8th JCG. So for this one, you can see that Sephi Rune also had a high conversion rate, and also it actually won the tournament this time. So to talk about this deck, I was saying even before the nerf, I said, look, firstly, I think this deck is pretty good, but there's no reason really to play it while Inherent of Elimination is in. But after the nerf, the use case to bring Sephi Rune has gone up significantly. It's a tempo-based deck, which has OTK potential, once you've got 5 test subjects in play, and also Sephi is like, multiples of 5, 10, 15, 20 damage, depending on, how much mana you have. So I think from turn 8 onwards, it's like literally 20 damage OTK. And that's like not even including like whether or not you chip damage them, not including, whether or not you have Evo point, etc. So it's a really strong, consistent deck. Not surprising at all that this is really, not surprising that this became top of the meta after the Spellburst nerf. Definitely tier 1. And then once again, Chess Rune, it's not showing up much now because between Spellburst and Sephi, and Spellburst and Chess Rune are like pretty similar, to be fair, right? But between Spellburst and Sephi, at the moment, those are cannibalizing the play rate. Like, for example, if you banned Sephi and you banned Spellburst, right? Chess Rune will probably come into the meta, and it'll probably be tier 1 or 2, right? But because these 2 decks are here, obviously people aren't going to play that over these 2 decks unless they just enjoy Chess Rune. Maybe there'll be a build in the future that will be better than Spellburst and Sephi, but at the moment, that is not what the results tell us. Moving on, Puppet Portal. So this is a deck that has a really high play rate, actually, but the conversion rate is low, and also its performance is pretty low, hence why the tier list puts it as tier 3. Now, I think this deck is tier 2. I think it has some polarizing matchups. The issue with Puppet Portal is that it doesn't have any kind of OTK potential, but It's got a huge amount of tempo. It's got some good matchups. I think any board-based deck still kind of suffers against Puppet Portal. It's not it's not easy to clear their boards. They can poke you for like a huge amount of damage, and against some matchups, even the healing can be relevant from Lashana, etc. So I don't know. It might be a skill issue, but yeah, I don't think this is actually like a tier 3 deck. I think it's a tier 2 deck in my mind. Plays pretty much the same way as it did before, except they run like the new mech guy, Kisrael. And then he basically provides the opportunity to clear the board and do firestorm damage and draw 2. It's pretty insane. Cool. Moving on, so Loot Sword. Loot Sword is an interesting case, right? Because the performance of the deck is not great in terms of conversion rate. It's got a 3.51% conversion rate in this tournament, and I think its conversion rate in the previous tournament was not good either, like 4%, right? But I think this can be explained by the following. Number one, I think the deck is actually quite difficult to pilot. And number two, when you look at the past 2 JCGs, it's actually got 2 really deep runs. So it actually won this JCG, right? And then secondly, for the JCG prior, going back to the deck list here, it came second, right? And so if you look at the top end, like this deck is performing, but if you look at the average player bringing it, then the conversion rate speaks for the story. So you can either look at it 2 ways. One, it's potentially variance, and then this deck will come crashing down because maybe these guys are just getting really lucky, right? Alternatively, you could consider that it's got a higher skill ceiling, right? And so basically, if you've really mastered the deck, then you'll get a much better performance. So I think I'm comfortable putting this in tier 1 for now, but I think future performances in tournaments will really paint the picture. Moving on, so we've got Arm Dragon. So Arm Dragon, it's got a pretty good performance actually. It's in tier 2 right now. I think I agree with that assessment. Obviously, as you guys have seen, Blast Form is insanely broken. Like it's it's basically 3 mana, deals 7 damage to the opponent's leader, and like anyway, I don't think it's like. I think it's like it's a class that's being carried by a number of really, really strong cards. I don't think there's too much to say about it. I think it's clearly 2-2. Now, Last Word Shadow is an interesting one. So I think off the top of my head, its conversion rate has been really, really good across both tournaments, but it doesn't have much of a deep run. So I think there's a few explanations for this. I think, there are consistency issues with the deck. That's one thing. But I also think that Last Word Shadow is a deck that it does worse against more skilled players. So, and depending on the deck that the opponent is playing as well. So, for example, Spellboost Rune, for instance, can like board lock you, right? And so they don't let you get to 10 last words until after they're ready to set up. Alternatively, also Spellboost Rune, now that it doesn't OTK as much, like you can kind of like just banish your followers with Uranus. They can let you combo off and do like 15 or whatever damage it is. I think it's 14 damage plus like 3 from Spirit Invasion, so 17. And afterwards, like they drop Uranus and they drop Orchestral Mage, and then that will allow them to heal up like 10, 15 damage or something. And then Last Word Shadow will have issues trying to finish the game from there. So I think that's one explanation. But ultimately, I think the deck is very like It does what it's supposed to. It's got a really strong upside. I'm not surprised that it's got a decent conversion rate. Tier 2 seems appropriate for it is at the moment. Discard Dragon, yet another deck with a really high conversion rate, and also actually pretty decent like deep run rate, I think. So if I'm looking at it, Discard Dragon made 2 top 4s in the previous tournament, and then in this tournament here, I think it got 2nd place, and the others kind of griefed a little bit, but it is what it is. So I think Discard Dragon's interesting. Obviously, it's a lot worse than it was last expansion. They lost a lot of consistency. They lost like the Orb Cancer, which really allowed you to like hit the 4 discard breakpoint and to like hit all of your useful cards faster. And they also lost like the Dragon Newt card, which was also like a discard 1 and draw 1 card. So I personally see it more as like a high roll deck these days, but I mean when a high roll is like there's not much decks can do. There's not much that decks can really do about it. Noir and Blank remain really strong cards, which if they come down like before your opponent is ready to deal with them because you hyper ramped, or if they come down with like Lumiere or something like that, it's really difficult to beat them. And also, the new Enforcer, Drazeo, when she comes down, it's like 5 AoE damage. It's not damage, it's like reducing like the stats by -5, -5, and a heal for 5, and it's a ward that can't be destroyed. So like this buys a turn as well. Like it's pretty good against aggro, in my mind, and it has the ability to pretty much beat any deck because it's got disruption cards like Phylene, it's got the ability to heal up Gilnelis, it's got a huge amount of board tempo with Lumiere swings, and it's got the ramp high roll. So it's tier 2 for sure, if not tier 1. I think it's tier 2 just because when I've been playing on a ladder, I just always break, but clearly it's not the case for a lot of players. So it's up to you, like whether or not you think it's tier 1 or tier 2. Obviously it'll be like, on the meta for quite a while to come. Okay, moving on. Let's go back to the tier list. So, and I think actually based on the tier list, this is considered the 4th best deck. It's just not quite meeting the mark for tier 1. Amulet Haven, this is an interesting one. Like, I think it's good. I don't really like playing the deck much. I think that's probably the case for a lot of people. Like, it's one of those decks where, like, I don't think people think it's bad. It's just that people just don't like playing Haven. It's probably the best way to explain it. It's roughly the same as before. I did get a new card. I think it's like the 6-cost bird, and it gives you a few more like kind of flexible plays when you don't quite draw like the combo. It is the 7-cost, so it's a Ruby Falcon. Let's have a look. Yep, so when you crystallize it, whenever you play follow 2 attack or less, give it Storm. And that'll give you like a bunch of like combos which you wouldn't usually have. For example, you could actually play this and then drop Gilnelis. And then like now you don't have to like burn like your Diamond Master in order to do it, for instance, or your Wingy or etc. So like it's just 6 damage, which is pretty good. And then of course you can just play this for 7, and then you can play this 4 damage plus Gilnelis, and then that's 10 damage. So yeah. It's a pretty flexible card. A lot of people are running it apparently. So yeah, Amulet Haven. It's probably like roughly the same deck as it was before. I think people just enjoy playing Sephi, Spellwhisper, and Sword, etc. more than this. I think Discard Dragon has like a decent matchup into it because Drazeo is insanely good because it doesn't die to the to the Diamond Master effect. So like it does have like a few bad-ish matchups, but overall I think it's a good good deck. And then we spoke about Last Wish, Shadow, Puppet Portal, Hazumi Forest. So like I'll get into this one as well. So I think the deck lists for this haven't been fully optimized yet. So we might still see this get better performance later on, but essentially the main purpose of this deck is you wanna play like your Hazumi as fast as possible. So you're relying on taking cards like your Gariel to get your cards like costing 0 or whatever. You want to play Slade, and you basically combo all of this off. You play Hazumi, and you get Wimeo. You get Wimeo, and you get Cosmo Fang, right? And then basically, your Cosmo Fang on this turn, like you're probably already taking a huge amount of damage because like you don't do anything before you drop your combo, right? And so if they have a board of like 5 followers, and then you have like your Hazumi, and there's also like 4 or 5 followers, right? You get Cosmo Fang, you get Wimeo, and then you Evo Cosmo Fang, you bounce everything, you heal for 9 off that alone, and then you can play like a second Wimeo, right? So your board is now Cosmo Fang, Wimeo, Wimeo, and then you pass your turn, it bounces your Wimeos to hand, right? And then 2 more come down. And so like essentially if you have like any more Wimeos in hand, or if you have any more bounce in hand, you can end the turn with like 3 or 4 of this card potentially. Just depends on how you draw. So you'll see some really high roll scenarios here, and the thing is, like, based on the play pattern I've described here, like, you are just healing for, like, 14 HP or something like that. It's, like, ridiculous, potentially. So, and then afterwards, they're staring at the board with, like, Cosmo Fang, multiple males, and if you have Tamlin, it might be lethal right then and there. So, this deck has a lot of potential, but I think people just haven't really locked down yet on the exact list. And even if it's not broken right now, guys, I think that, based on the track record of Hazumi, you see what it's done in Unlimited, you saw what it did in Crosscraft. One mistake, just one mistake, and like in terms of like a card being released that shouldn't be, and bam, this deck is tier 1 or even tier 0. So we'll see how it goes, but at the moment, based on results, it's got really shit results actually. It's tier 3 for now. Okay, and then moving on to Wrathblood. So this deck, I actually think this deck is surprisingly difficult to play. It's not a playstyle for everyone, and also even when this deck was like doing really well and like getting a huge amount of win streaks, people like just don't like playing this deck. It's a little similar to, Crystallized Haven. I think it's like a little slept on. But yeah, essentially like the idea for this deck is, you just hit Wrath as soon as possible, activate your effects, do storm damage, and then you're kind of saving up for your Gyaradeath. So if you've got 0 cost effects, you can actually activate this earlier, and then this card by itself is like 8 plus 3 damage, I think. It's like 11 damage off one card, so it's pretty strong. Yeah, it's got 8/8, and it does 3 damage on summon. But at the same time, like once people understand how this deck works, you've got a few options. You can board lock them, you can hyper aggro them, for instance. So one of the play patterns like some people might do is you deliberately drop them to like 3 HP or something like that. So like they actually can't even activate this guy's effect without killing themselves. Depending on what the hand is, obviously. Let's actually see how this deck is doing in tournament play. 20x7. Wrathblood. Yeah. So like I said, it's just not a very popular deck. Like the conversion rate is fine, right? But people just don't like playing this deck. So I mean, until like I think like maybe it's popularized more by like Championship Win or pro players playing it more, like in the Rage Pro Tour. Like I mean, it's just going to be tier 3 for now, but I think it might be sleeper. Moving on, Control Portal. So this deck, some people are actually already playing this against Spellburst before. But I think this deck does have a few glaring weaknesses, right? So I'll just open it up and show you like what the deck list is. So I think only one person brought this, but since I had a deep run, it's been placed in the tier 3. But this is a deck that has existed for a while. So they use like Xion, and I think they use Arc. So Arc is like Arc is a card that can basically tutor Portal Craft followers. So it makes it more likely that you'll hit Xion. And then essentially when you're playing a Spellburst, right, and you drop Xion, it is like really hard for them to actually like break over this. So you usually actually have to like drop their followers earlier. So like they need to like tempo you on turn 5, or like if they're going first, they just tempo you on turn 6. But now that they can't OTK you and there's no inherent, it's a lot harder to do that. So this deck has a really good matchup into Spellburst. The only issue is that like I don't think it's that great against Testosterone. And the reason behind that is because Testosterone, they just play their board, and then like you have to clear the board, right? And then when they do, eventually they hit a Sephi win condition, and Xion doesn't do much against it because Testosterone runs like 3 Olivia, and then like they recover the Evo points, and then on the turn they want to OTK you, they just play Sephi and they Evo their Sephi, and they can transform Xion into a test subject. And Xion is immune to all types of removal except transformation. So unfortunately, this doesn't really do much against the deck. And so if you've taken any damage, and your Arc isn't active, for instance, so say Testosterone goes second, your Arc is never going to be active to give you +1 max HP. So I think this deck would be better if it were like purely a Spellburst meta, but because Sephi is in the meta, I don't know. I think it's a good like kind of anti-meta deck. But like it's also a rogue deck, so I mean, yeah, it's tier 3 now. Wouldn't be surprised if it drops more, especially if Testosterone becomes way more popular. But we'll see how it goes. Might drop down to tier 4, I think. Condemned Haven. So this is a deck where like basically, if you reach turn 9, you can do an OTK combo. You need to draw both of the, I think it's 7 cost. Yeah, you need to draw 2 of the Winged Enforcer here, and you play both. They refund each other 5 play points, and then you play Holy Lightning Bird 5 times, and then it's like 20 damage. So it's an OTK, but I mean, the problem with this deck, right, is like you just die to like every deck that has an OTK combo, which is like essentially a Spellburst and Sephi Rune, right? So like if you bring this deck, like you pretty much just lose to Rune, and there might be like other decks as well with like strong OTK combos, and so you won't even reach turn 9. Like once they realize you're playing Heal Haven, like they're like, okay, whatever, I'll just set up until I can OTK you. So yeah, I think Condemned Haven, if the meta changes, I think maybe it'll see like more of a place, but until now, I think it's tier 4. Okay, Chesterun, I think I described this earlier. I think this deck is a little bit too low in the tier list. I think, obviously not many people are playing it, right? Because, I mean, Spellburst and Sephi exist, but like I said, if those decks didn't exist, then you'd just be playing Chess Rune instead, probably. So it's just unfortunate from that respect. Handless Blood, super unpopular at the moment, but you know, I think a few people, or maybe just one person, made it top 16, so it's showing up, which means that it's obviously got a pretty high conversion rate. So like it would be remiss like not to put this on the tier list at all, but for now I would just say it's tier 4 deck, it's a rogue deck. Yeah, I think this will have any issues like as before with any deck with like strong healing, decks that can like, you know, tempo out massively. But the deck it's not bad, but it's also not good. And the final deck is Ghost Shadow, so this deck here. It's pretty similar to how it was the last one, except they got a new card called Ghastly Banishment, which is like the AoE and hits leader and does like 7 damage or whatever. I think it's got like a certain issue. I think, you know, you still need to draw Masquerade Ghost, and if you don't hit Masquerade Ghost, then like it's not anywhere near the same deck. And then sometimes even if you do draw Masquerade Ghost, you still don't necessarily win. So yeah, Ghost Shadow is an interesting one. I don't think it's a bad deck. Even last expansion I thought it was okay, but it wasn't good enough if you catch my drift. But I think this is perfectly fine for a ladder's perspective. But tournament play, I just don't see the point of playing this right now. It's not in the current meta where, again, I think, you know, Test Subject Rune and Spell Boost are actually pretty good into this. So I think that's it for the tier list. This is basically like, I think the tier list that we've got on this website is pretty accurate. You know, there's not really anything that I would say like particularly sticks out aside from the ones I mentioned. At the moment, it is Sephi and Spell Boost Rune at the top. My only disclaimer is that when it comes to like playing, when it comes to ladder, right, I think you can actually play any deck that you want. All of these decks will allow you to win on ladder. I think like, you know, there's a huge skill component for a few of these decks. So like what's more important than how high they are on the tier list is like how confident you feel on piloting the deck that you enjoy playing. You know, I'm pretty sure you can easily play Chess Rune or like Handless or Ghost Shadow on the ladder and like win a decent amount of the time. So just play what you want, but if you're here for the tournament perspective, this is my viewpoint on the top tier decks at the moment. So hope that was informative. Hope it gives you a bit of demo into like what we can do with this site. As I mentioned before, if there's any deck that you want to net deck, you can just press the copy button here, and then it goes to your clipboard, and then you can just copy and paste that into your Shadowverse client, and away you go. And then also we have a win streak section. So I mean, we obviously haven't launched yet, so all it's got is like my singular deck from post Nerf. I did have a couple of much higher win streaks, but unfortunately we wiped them because of the nerfs. So anyways, if you guys have any decks that, you know, are topping the ladder and you've got like a couple win streaks, make sure to submit it. So you can like kind of log in with like your Discord. So I'll show you. I used to authorize it, and then essentially after you do this, and so once you finish logging in, you can just click here to your profile. So this will allow you to add your Twitter account if you have one. So for me, it's just BMROC. You press save, and then following that, you can just go straight to share a streak. When you put your deck code in, you put your win streaks in, and then your proof. So it can either be Imager or it can be your Twitter post, whichever one is okay. You click on the format, and then you just click submit. Following that, so if you go to win streaks, once we approve it from our side, it'll show up here. So as you can see, if you've got a Twitter account, it'll take you straight to that person's Twitter account. And also we've got a source here as well. So this will take you to the proof. So for this one, it is the Imager. It's a 5 win streak playing Rune. Pretty much it. So if you do have any, win streaks, feel free to kind of put them in, and then, you know, you can actually search for cards as well. So just draw Mage, and then you can click search. Of course, since it's only one deck, it'll just show the one deck. But regardless, you know, it'll build out later. You can search by class, and obviously Orchestral Mage will no longer show up because it's not a Swordcraft card. So that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoy the site. Give me any feedback if this is the type of content you like, and chuck me a like and subscribe. Cheers. See you next time.